Hi everyone, I am here on my back porch to talk with you for just a couple minutes about Giving Tuesday. Again, this is something that we did, I don't know, December, and why the National MS Society has impacted my life in some really interesting ways. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you. So welcome to my back porch, and this is where I'm going to be for the next couple of minutes, where I share this story with you, and hopefully somebody doesn't start mowing their grass, which has been what has been happening, it seems like, every time I do a Facebook Live on my back porch. So we did virtual Walk MS this past weekend, and it was really awesome because a lot of people joined us from all over the place, from different states, but also from in our local community. And I was really just kind of blown away by the amount of support that we got, because I know it can be really hard to understand how doing a virtual walk or just counting steps around your house can have such an impact on people like me who are living with MS. I get really passionate when I talk about the National MS Society and the volunteers and the staff and the members and the people that have been just really supporting me through this past decade living with MS. So I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis in October 2010. I was 27 years old, my daughter was 5, and Travis and I had only been dating about 3 months when I was diagnosed. So how things started for me was I started getting tingling in my left hand, numbness and weakness, and I know a lot of you have heard this story, but I think it kind of bears repeating. It felt like carpal tunnel, and in our office at Blair Plastic Surgery, we did a lot of carpal tunnel. So I went to my boss and I said, "Hey, Dr. Luton, my hand feels weird. Can you check this? Does this look like carpal tunnel? But I'm right-handed," and it was not carpal tunnel. He said, "I think you need to see somebody." Around that same time, I had lost the feeling in my toes of my left leg, and by the time I got into the doctor, I had lost the feeling in my entire left leg, up my left arm, and part of my torso, which is a weird thing when you lose feeling in your torso. I hadn't experienced that. There are about 1 million people in the United States living with MS. So chances are you know someone that has a story like mine. So I'm not going to go too far into the details. But I remember exactly where I was when I got the call from my neurologist that I had MS, because I was diagnosed by a phone call. And I was sitting at work, and I looked up, and I could see the clock, and my day had not started yet. And he said, "You know, Diane, I am so sorry, but you have MS." And he was really choked up telling me, he said, "You know, you have such a young family, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks." Okay. Called Travis, and I said, "I have MS. Pick me up after work." Well, I guess that was it, and I just had to stick it on the back burner. But I remember holding the phone and hearing those words and hearing them kind of just pass right through me. I had no idea what a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis was going to mean for me or my family. So I am a licensed practical nurse, and I had the privilege and honor of working with the staff at Blair Plastic Surgery for about 8 years. I was only about 3 years into my tenure with them when I was diagnosed, and even as a nurse practicing, I had no idea what MS was going to mean. So right after my diagnosis, my neurologist prescribed a disease modifier. Disease modifier is a medication that can help slow or even stop the progression of MS. There are so many treatment options that are available now, like 22 FDA-approved medications for MS. In 2010, there were not 22. But I didn't know about any of this kind of stuff. The medication that was first prescribed for me was denied, so a second medication was prescribed, and a nurse came to our house and did injection training, and Travis started giving me once-weekly injections. I had no idea what to do after that. Okay, so now I'm on a medication, I have a disease modifier, I have a neurologist, I have a ton of MS symptoms, and now I'm battling all of the side effects of the disease modifier. I was completely and utterly overwhelmed. So then I was contacted by a patient advocate. And I just dumped on this woman that called. I was so emotional. I was so unsure of what I was doing. And I just was spilling out all of this stuff. And she stopped me and she said, I need to stop you right here. I am the patient advocate from your insurance company. Insert insurance company name here. And I'm calling to let you know what your copays are going to be for your medication. So 3 months after diagnosis, my insurance company changed. My first disease modifier and my neurologist were no longer covered. So I switched to neurologist number 2, a second medication. And I didn't feel like I was doing anything. I felt like I was just this passive part. This was just this thing that was happening to me and I wasn't involved in my care. And I started getting really frustrated and I started getting really angry. My second neurologist made a prediction based on what he was seeing as a rapid progression that I would be in a wheelchair within the year, and he recommended that I quit my job then to spend what time I had left with my family. And every time I say those 2 statements, I can hear his voice echoing in my mind. That conversation was followed by receiving a catalog in the mail. It was a catalog of durable medical equipment, and durable medical equipment are wheelchairs and hospital beds. And that was the catalog that he sent me to prepare. I felt like my life was no longer my own. I was not in control of anything, and now I've got a catalog of wheelchairs and hospital beds coming directly to me. It was just blow after blow after blow. But part of my saving grace was in the back of that catalog was a small ad, and I wish I had kept it because it's another one that I can just see in my mind. There was a small ad for the National MS Society, and it had the website nationalmssociety.org. I like to say that this is where my story actually began because everything changed. I am a nurse, and I believe in the power of patient involvement. I had to know more. So I went to the website and all of the information that I was craving was there. There were easy to use guides and we became experts on explaining what MS was to our friends and family. So just again, to kind of put the framework together here, we had been dating for 3 months. There's a 5-year-old. Case was 15, so we had a kindergartner and a high schooler, a chronic disease diagnosis that we know nothing about, and months of just flying by the seat of our pants and hoping that something would give. And what gave was a tiny ad for the National MS Society in the back of a wheelchair catalog. So we get on the website, we learn all sorts of stuff, and we are able to tell people what's going on, what we can expect. So everything was there. There was contact information for support groups. There were physical and virtual support groups. There were people that were sharing their stories about what was going on, and there were an awful lot of people that looked like me. So there were also easy to use guides for employment, insurance, long-term planning, all of those things that at 27 I was really thinking I wasn't going to need, but I definitely needed. So within minutes of getting on the website, I was armed with all sorts of information, all sorts of actions that I could take too. I got copies of Momentum magazine. That's the quarterly national publication of the National MS Society. We downloaded and printed copies of Keep Smilin'. Now that's the kids magazine that's interactive. We printed those out and we sent them to kindergarten with Mia. And we gave them to all the elementary school teachers at Lamont and then at Grays Woods. And then again through middle school, we just kept on sharing this information because with 1 million people living in the U.S. with MS, there's a lot of moms, there's a lot of dads, there's a lot of families that are impacted by MS, and Keep Smilin' became an absolutely essential resource for us. So not only did we have all of these resources now, they were free. People were donating, keeping the National MS Society fully funded, and so we weren't having to pay for those too because there's a huge financial component to chronic disease. So that was another relief to have that. So Travis and I decided that we were going to self-refer to a comprehensive care center because we had had enough of hearing things like rapid progression, gonna be in a wheelchair, we don't know what to do, we'll see you in 6 months. Had enough of that. So I went back on the website and I connected with the National MS Society's MS Navigators. The MS Navigators deserve the biggest hugs and chocolate and high fives, and they should wear capes because in my mind they're superheroes. The MS Navigators are super highly trained professionals that are all over the United States, and you can access them by calling 1-800-FIGHT-MS. They also have a chat that you can do online. You can also email them, and they're available 10 hours a day, every day, and they have been unaffected and undisrupted in their incredible service through the entire COVID-19 crisis, which to me, when things like everything have been interrupted, the priority of having the MS Navigators has been just fantastic. So anyway, we call the MS Navigators. They help me self-refer. So we made our first trip to Johns Hopkins Multiple Sclerosis Center March 9th, 2011, and we met with my neurologist, his nurse practitioner, and his clinical nurse, and we spent hours in Baltimore that day learning about what multiple sclerosis is, how it specifically was going to affect me, and we started setting goals, long-term goals. What do we want to be able to do in the future? We learned so much that day too about ongoing research trials and where I might fit in all of that. And we developed a relationship that we still have today. I still see the same neurologist, and his staff are incredible. So this is my funny twist story. A few years into our time at Johns Hopkins, we were talking about how Bike MS was coming up. So I had already at this point been an I Ride with MS rider in the Keystone Country Ride here in Central PA. And we're talking about Bike MS, and I was actually preparing for the ride. So I usually visit right before the ride to make sure I'm good to ride. And we're talking about it, and he said, you know, I really love Bike MS because the National MS Society paid for my fellowship in neuroimmunology. So my doctor's next level expertise was paid for by fundraising and donations from the National MS Society, and he has impacted thousands of lives, not just as a clinician, but he's also a groundbreaking MS researcher. So it's these little things that we think about that, you know, if you're only donating $5 or $10, those $5 or $10 have global implications. This research is incredible. Meanwhile, the MS Navigators were there for me every step of the way. They're super trained, and I told you about that, and they have my best interest in mind, not necessarily an insurance company and not necessarily a pharmaceutical company. The services of the MS Navigators are free and confidential, and they have gotten me into the right hands and gotten me answers about insurance, copay assistance, background on treatment options that's unbiased has been important to me too. Through the years, we have lived this really hyper-accelerated version of our dreams, whether it was when we had the Farm of Danger and Excellence and our dreams had chickens and goats in it, or when I started running out of spite for that doctor and his wheelchair prediction, and I ran 500 miles in 1 year. It's just been incredible how it's continued to perpetuate over that. I talked a little bit about Bike MS and how Bike MS has become this incredible touchstone for me. We started out by using the Myelinator name, which Travis came up for our first Walk MS in 2011, and we were the Blair Plastic Surgery Myelinators, riding, you know, all over the place and raising money. And it became a touchstone every year that I could do it. I love to tell the story of my first year riding Bike MS. Where I bought a bike off of Amazon called a GMC Denali, and it was about 1 million pounds, and everybody at the finish line was like holding their bikes up, and there was no way that that was happening for me. And the other part of our first year biking MS was Travis had emergency surgery a week before Bike MS, so my riding partner, I didn't have a riding partner, so I'm doing this solo on a bike that I've only ridden like 4 times, hoping for the best. But I finished. I rode 150 miles, and I would continue to do that year after year because crossing that finish line was proof that I could do this, that I could keep on doing life at this incredible milestone, or at this incredible next level. So this yearly milestone for me in July. I rode the next 3 consecutive years, and then again in 2015, during the ride, I really started to struggle, and I struggled more than I had ever before, and I finished, but just barely. 2015 would mark the beginning of a 2-year period for me that would just be incredibly challenging. I had multiple flares during that time that required lots and lots of steroids. And every single time I had an MRI, I had new lesions on it and active areas of disease. I had my first MS-related hospitalization, and I started relying really heavily on the resources of the National MS Society then, whether it was copay assistance programs or just helping me to kind of figure out what I needed to be doing next. My care team rallied around me too. We started really targeting treatment and talking about what therapy needed to look like and what was normal progression and what might be something else. My cognition changed. I had a couple of really bad falls, including one where I hit the back of my head and knocked myself out for a second. I had lots of problems with vertigo, and I just had this big burst of MS activity. I had to medically retire from nursing when I walked into a room and had no idea what I was doing and couldn't reorient myself to that. I had such a kind of severe shift in cognition. I got lost in the neighborhood walking the dog one day. And these things were just devastating to me, as I'm sure they would be to anybody when you are used to things being a certain way and you have taken on your new normal and then there's a big shift. So I had all this kind of stuff happen. The National MS Society, again, was unfailingly there. The navigators kept checking in on me. They kept making sure I was plugged in. Local volunteers were in contact with me and just letting me know that they were here, and it was so important to me. I felt like MS and chronic disease kind of, people stop seeing you and they just see the disease, and they were seeing me and they were concerned about what was going on. So again, I was just overwhelmed with wanting to pay things back to the National MS Society in any way I could. So I really got serious about enrolling in clinical trials then. My neurologist had talked about it at our first appointment, and I had done it, but I really got serious about it. We have an incredibly rich legacy of research at the National MS Society, and it always makes me so happy to say that, because the society was founded in 1946, and 1947 would see the launching of the first 3 research studies. So right out of the gate, we're foundationally balanced in research. So I have tried medications that showed promise for remyelination. I've altered my diet to take a closer look at gut health and how that impacts me. I've had extensive imaging done, including really close-up looks of my pupils to see if you can see early symptoms of MS before it really starts, early warning signs. And to date, I have volunteered for and participated in over 20 MS-related research trials and studies, and 3/4 of those were funded by the National MS Society. My greatest research trial claim to fame, though, is still going to be being assigned the now retired patient identifying number of 007, which was for the leothyroid study, which was the remyelination study, and I just loved being patient 007. I've raised money for the National MS Society in a lot of really different ways. I traveled to Philly and ran in a muck fest with the group of women from here in State College, and we helped raise money and awareness about MS in a completely different way than I ever had before. I was part of training sessions for the National MS Society's Navigator program in 2018, and the purpose of that was to help patients find comprehensive care centers just like the navigators had done for me way back in 2011. In spring 2019, I was in Momentum Magazine, the quarterly publication of the National MS Society, talking about cognition, the area that the National MS Society funded a study on that has changed the way that practitioners screen patients, helping to intervene earlier and to help find therapies that work to improve cognition just about right away. I signed up for a new medication trial this past spring. No, it was in January, this past winter, that is changing the delivery of the disease modifier ocrelizumab to make it quicker, more convenient, and better tolerated to help people get back moving, back into life more quickly, and help medication be more accessible. In January 2020, we kicked off the State College MS Connection Group, which is a support group that is available to anyone who's affected by MS, no matter where they are in their diagnosis process, and no matter where their connection is. It could be them, it could be a family member, they could just be an MS ally, someone who stands up for and loves other people that have MS. And I was trained by the National MS Society and their support group leader program, and they have just been incredible in helping me make sure that I have everything that I need to continue to facilitate that group and help build connections. The feeling of aloneness that I had in my early time right after diagnosis really drives me to make sure that we're here for the people that need us. In September of 2019, I went to the Pennsylvania State Capitol in Harrisburg as a part of State Action Day to share my story to help drive change in legislation. And then a few weeks ago, we just had the first virtual State Action Day, where I'm sure you heard me talk about prior authorization reform, something that I'm battling right now, and improving the access to medications that not just I need, but anyone needs. Again, this is not just about MS. These are public policy points that affect everyone. And then I was in Washington, D.C. with the National MS Society for the Public Policy Conference. That was, I don't know, about 5 weeks ago. And I got to go to Capitol Hill to advocate for change with about 200 other district activist leaders and MS activists, and we just were this orange wave coming over Capitol Hill, and it was so incredible to not only have the support of the MS Society's staff and their resources, but they really have done an incredible job of elevating people like me to share our story to help to leverage change, because we all need a little change right now. I still have really bad days, and there is no doubt that my disease has continued to progress. Every day has brought a new set of obstacles, setbacks, struggles, but my fight to end multiple sclerosis is not over yet. I'm still planning for my life after MS, and I know with the groundbreaking research that's being done that we are really driving towards our final chapter in MS, and I can say that unflinchingly and knowing that this is what I'm going for. This is why I keep my nursing license, because I'm preparing for that life after MS. I cannot wait to tell you all that I don't have MS anymore. Wouldn't you be excited to hear that? Because I know you're tired of me talking about MS. So many things have changed in the 10 years since I was diagnosed. There are new disease modifiers, there are new recommendations, there are new protocols. There's completely new things. But what hasn't changed is the attitude that we adopted really early on in my fight, and what the National MS Society says too. Whatever it takes. We'll do whatever it takes. We'll go to the Senate and we will talk to our elected officials to make sure that meaningful care is accessible, that research is fully funded, and that there are affordable and accessible medications. We make phone calls and we write lots and lots of letters, and letters to the editor. And we build community connections, because the connections are going to drive our cures. And we reach out to others that are impacted by MS. I have voluntarily had spinal taps, MRIs, and I give lots of blood and tissue samples to further the research effort that is ongoing right now. We walk laps around our houses and around our neighborhoods, and we ride our bikes and we jump in mud pits, and we donate and we fundraise. We share our stories because more than anything, we want to do whatever it takes to find our cures for multiple sclerosis. Your fundraising matters and your support matters, and every single step you take, wherever you might be, whether it's virtually or with your family or around your kitchen, it matters. You have each had really far-reaching impacts in my life and the lives of so many that live with multiple sclerosis. You might never fully realize how you have impacted our stories and how much has changed. I encourage you, if you have the chance, to donate during Giving Tuesday today to the National MS Society. Through your donations, over $1 billion with a B dollars have been raised and put towards MS research. It's not just about the magazines and the brochures and the support groups. There's a lot of research that's going on right now too, and that's where our hope lies. It lies in the future. But while we wait, we still need those resources, like the MS Navigator program, like Momentum Magazine, like the Knowledge is Power program, like Real Talk MS, like all of the different resources that we have while we're working. So I appreciate you all letting me tell you a little bit more about my story and what happened that launched me towards the National MS Society. I do want to comment on one thing that was on my feed a lot of times during our virtual Walk MS, and that is the National MS Society's charity rating. You can find that on the website. You can also find all of the financials. They're right there on the website. So people that say, oh, well, you get money from this drug company and you do this and you do that. Yeah, it's all right there. It's very transparent. And that was what drew me to being a volunteer with the National MS Society, was the transparency that was there, that I could go and find any question that I needed answered right away. So I do always like to mention that. We've got a really good Charity Navigator rating, and I appreciate the support that's ongoing, because it makes a huge impact on my life and 1 million people just like me in the U.S. So thank you, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. Wow, thanks, Nicole. Thanks for donating. And I hope that we can do this all again. If you have any questions about the National MS Society, you can find them at nationalmssociety.org. If you want to join us for a support group meeting, we do those Wednesdays. They are Zoom meetings, and I'm happy to send you the information. We got Zoom bombed a little while back, so I do send out the invites kind of through email or through Messenger. They're not just plastered everywhere. We do that on Wednesdays. Real Talk MS new episodes come out on Tuesdays, so you should have seen today's. And Ask an Expert is the incredible web series that's going on right now on Fridays. And those are real-time webinars that help to answer a lot of the questions about MS and COVID-19 specifically, and what you can do to help. So thank you all so much, and we'll do it again soon.